Salve. In this video, we're going to learn about numbers in Latin. And to clarify, we're not going to be talking about Roman numerals or any kind of numerals. Numerals are the digits that we use to represent numbers, often in math, for example, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, seen here. Instead, we're going to be learning the words for numbers, which in English would be like this: 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now we have two categories of numbers that we're going to deal with, those being cardinal numbers and ordinal numbers. Cardinal numbers are those that simply tell us the amount of something, so numbers like 1, 2, 3. Ordinal numbers tell us where something comes in an order, sequence, or ranking, so those would be first, second, and third, and so forth. Okay, let's start with cardinal numbers and just look at the first three. So we have, in Latin, unus, duo, and tres. Now these numbers function as adjectives because they describe nouns and tell us how many of that noun we have. These three function like normal adjectives in that they agree with the noun in case, number, and gender. So, if we wanted to say one boy in Latin, we'd say unus puer. One girl would be una puella. One gift would be unum donum, because donum is a neuter noun. And of course the adjective would change case along with the noun as well. So if we made all of these accusative, we'd instead have unum puerum, unam puellam, and for one gift we would still have unum donum because it's neuter, so it would just be the same as the nominative anyway. In the genitive and the dative case, the adjective unus actually has irregular forms, but we're not going to worry about those right now. All right, next one, look at two. If we wanted to say two boys, we would have duo pueri. Duo also has irregular forms, and again, we won't worry about those at the moment. If we said two girls, that would be duai puellae, and two gifts would be duo dona. And the accusative would be duos pueros, duas puellas, and duo dona again. For three, we're actually going to use third declension endings, which we haven't covered yet, so they won't look familiar to you at this point. But for three boys, we would say tres pueri. Three girls, we would have tres puellae. And for three gifts, we would have tria dona. If we change this to the accusative, we'd actually have the same Latin words for three every time. So in the accusative, it would be tres pueros, tres puellas, and tria dona again. Okay, let's move on to the other numbers. 4 is quatuor. Now starting here, the numbers won't change for gender or case, so whether we want to say 4 girls or 4 boys in the nominative or the accusative, it's still going to be just quatuor. 5 is quinque. 6 is sex. 7 is septem. 8 is octo. 9 is novem. And 10 is decem. So for the numbers 7 through 10, we can see some obvious derivatives, those being the months in our calendar. However, you'll also notice that the numbering is off. September is our 9th month, but it comes from the Latin number 7. The reason for this is that the early Roman calendar had March as the first month of the year. And if you do the math from there, that means September would be the 7th month. October would be the 8th, November the 9th, and December the 10th. Okay, let's look at the teen numbers now. We have undecim, duodecim, tridecim, quattordecim, quindecim, sedecim, septendecim. Thus far, we're obviously just taking the word for 10, which is decem, and then adding other numbers to the front of that. But with 18, we actually get a change. The word for 18 is duodeviginti. 19 is undeviginti, and 20 is viginti. So what we're actually doing here, if you look at the number 18, is taking three words, duo, which means two, de, which means, among other things, from, and wiginti, which is 20. So you put them all together, duo de wiginti literally means 2 from 20, therefore 18. Un de wiginti is 1 from 20, therefore 19, and wiginti is just 20. All right. Now moving into the 20s, we already saw wiginti, so we'll have wiginti unus for 21, wiginti duo, wiginti tres, wiginti quatuor, wiginti quinque, wiginti sex, wiginti septem. Then we'll move back to that subtractive method and have duo de triginta, un de triginta, and triginta. Okay, now let's look at all the multiples of 10. So we already saw 10, that's decem. We already saw 20, that's wiginti. And we already saw 30, triginta. For 40, we'll have quadraginta. 50 is quinquaginta. 60, sexaginta. 70, septuaginta. 80, octoginta. 90, nonaginta. And 100, centum. Okay, now we'll see multiples of 100. So we just saw centum, which is 100. And by the way, if we wanted to add 1 to that and get 101, we'd have centum unus, or another possibility is they would do something we do in English and add the word and in the middle and get centum et unus, which basically just means 101. After that, we'll have ducenti. Now we're going to have another change. Starting with ducenti, these are going to change for case and for gender. So if we wanted to say 200 boys, we would say ducenti pueri. But if we wanted to say 200 girls, it would be ducentai puellae. After that we have trecenti, quadringenti, quingenti, sescenti, septingenti, octingenti, nongenti, and mille for 1,000. Now here there's a little trick that we can use to help us remember which numbers are which. You may have noticed that the multiples of 10 and the multiples of 100 do look somewhat similar. For example, 90 is nonagenta, whereas 900 is nongenti. Here's the trick. If you see the letters Kent or Gent, C-E-N-T or G-E-N-T, in the word, then that tells you that you're dealing with a multiple of 100. Think about 100 cents in a dollar or 100 years in a century. If you don't see that Kent or Gent in the spelling, it's a multiple of 10 instead. Okay, now let's see multiples of 1,000. We already saw 1,000 for mille. For 2,000, we'll have duo millia. Millia is actually a plural form. It's got an A on it because it's a neuter plural, because it's actually multiple thousands. Then we have tria millia, quatuor millia, and so forth. Okay, now it's time to move on to the ordinal numbers. As we said before, those are the numbers that tell us where something is in a sequence, an order, or a ranking. We'll start out with the number for first, which is primus. Now, ordinals work as completely normal adjectives in Latin. So if you wanted to say first son, you'd say filius primus. First daughter would be filia prima. If you wanted to say first war, you would say bellum primum, with bellum being a neuter noun. Okay, so moving on from there, after primus we have secundus, tertius, quartus, quintus, sextus, septimus, octavus, nonus, and decimus. Now into the teens, undecimus, duodecimus, so we're just adding numbers together, tertius decimus, so actually two separate words, quartus decimus, quintus decimus, sextus decimus, septimus decimus, and of course now we're going to have something different. Duodecimus, undecimus, and vicesimus. So for the last three we have 2 from 20th, 1 from 20th, and 20th. Alright, in the 20s, we'll have vicesimus primus, vicesimus secundus, vicesimus tertius, vicesimus quartus, vicesimus quintus, vicesimus sextus, vicesimus septimus, again a change, duodecimus, undecimus, and tricesimus. So hopefully by now you can definitely see the pattern. For the multiples of 10, we already saw decimus, we saw vicesimus, and tricesimus. After that, for 40th, we'll have quadragesimus, quinquagesimus, sexagesimus, septuagesimus, octogesimus, nonagesimus, and centesimus. For multiples of 100, centesimus, ducentesimus, trecentesimus, quadringentesimus, quingentesimus, sesquentesimus, septingentesimus, octingentesimus, nongentesimus, and millesimus for 1,000th. Again, we do have that trick for these, where if you see that Kent or Gent spelling in the middle, that tells you that you're dealing with a multiple of 100. Okay, that is it for numbers. Let me know if you have any questions. Wale.